Welcome to this webinar for the UiPath testing platform. As already briefly mentioned, today it's all about the long-term vision and the short-term mission of our product. We have two speakers today. The first one, that's me, and the second one is Gerd. Gerd is heading our product management for the UiPath testing platform, and he's also the mastermind behind it. So if you have any questions, please use the Q&A panel here in Zoom to bombard us with as many questions as you like. So starting with today's webinar, we will host a series of webinars, as you can see on that slide. Now, most of these webinars are mainly focused on the core capabilities of the UiPath testing platform, such as RPA testing, API testing, mobile testing, SCP testing, and test management. So here we truly will make a deep dive into these capabilities. Today, in our product vision and product mission webinar, we will set the stage for these webinars to give you a high-level overview. And then we'll close this webinar series with a webinar that is not focused on software testing. It's not focused on any tools. It's solely focused on the discipline of software testing to also let you know how we see it. So that's the overall plan. And on top of that, we kindly ask you to support us in completing this survey. So this survey will help us to direct our engineering efforts into the right direction for the upcoming release of the UiPath testing platform. So you already received the link to the survey in the webinar invitation, but we will send out the link again after this session. So please help us to improve by taking this short survey. It will only take you about 15 minutes or so of your valuable time to complete this survey. Now, with any further ado, let's now dive into today's topic. As you can see, we subdivided this session into two parts. In the first one, we'll focus on the why, that is the long-term vision of the UiPath testing platform. And in the second part, we will focus on the what, that is our product mission. And this part includes a detailed overview over the capabilities that are planned to be released with the UiPath testing platform in April this year. Now, to safely dive into our vision, let's start thinking about the value of an automated business process first. So as we all know, the value of an automated business process is given by the relation between the savings you create by automating that business process and the total effort it takes to both automate it and to maintain it. Now, in case you automate your business processes in a prioritized way, that is, you start automating high-value business processes first, then the total savings, for example, in terms of FTEs, you expect through automation then would evolve according to the green curve here. Now, this is how it looks like in theory. However, in practice, there could be a significant gap between the expected and the actual savings. So based on what we have learned in practice, that is in our projects, the actual savings are very likely to evolve according to this red curve here. And this is mainly caused by the maintenance effort that is related to the automation of your business processes. Now, this is not a special issue in RPA, and it's definitely not a special issue of UiPath at all. This is an essential issue of automation in general. So any kind of automation needs maintenance. And since RPA is primarily automation, RPA, for that simple reason, needs maintenance too. So proactive maintenance, that is what we need to do. Reactive maintenance is what we need to avoid. So in short, we need to pay attention to the maintenance right from the beginning to avoid that, the expected savings of our RPA start to erode due to the constantly growing effort of maintaining automation. Now, and that's already our very first learning. So one goal of the UiPath testing platform is to help you to turn RPA from a rather high maintenance activity to a low maintenance activity. And creating low maintenance RPA means creating sustainable RPA. And this means being able to create scalable RPA. And creating scalable RPA means creating beneficial RPA, long-term beneficial RPA. So this in turn then enables you to fully realize the benefits of RPA in order to accelerate your digital transformation initiatives. Now, when we are talking about maintenance issues related to RPA, then we are mainly talking about the stability of automated business processes. So high maintenance RPA most often comes from, let's call it fragile automation. Now, fragile automation means unstable automation that causes your bots to break in production. And that's definitely one problem that has to be solved. Another problem that has to be solved is the effort it takes to even create automation, and so RPA. Now we see that it usually takes RPA developers several weeks up to a few months to automate a single business process. And this often then makes automation become, let's say, a tedious task. So RPA becomes a time-consuming activity. And on top of that, we observe that automation happens across the entire enterprise. So it happens in software development, it happens in IT operations, and it happens on the business side, for example, by RPA teams. Now, these teams are often completely separated from each other. And so automation itself becomes siloed. And as a result of this, the automation skills in an organization become unexploited. And this then often leads to the fact that automation within a single organization is often reinvented over and over and over again. And this leads to redundant automation. And that is simply a waste of time. And that's just another problem that has to be solved to scale automation across the entire enterprise. So now let's dig into each of these problems one by one to figure out how we can solve them. And let's start with the stability aspect first. And here let's ask a very simple question. The question is, what actually breaks your bots? Well, again, based on what we have learned in our projects, there are three main reasons why bots break in production. Now, the first group of problems that causes bots to break is centered around application changes. And these changes are typically made by software development teams, and they include technical changes or changes in the business logic of the software applications. Now, we see that unstable automation mainly results from the fact that RPA teams all too often have a really hard time to incorporate these changes into their RPA in a timely manner. And that just means before these changes are deployed to production. Now, that's the first group. The second group of problems that causes our bots to break in production is centered all around environment issues. And these issues typically are performance issues, for example, or issues resulting from dependencies to third-party services or data-related issues, or issues caused by system updates. For example, when you update your operating systems, or you make an update or an upgrade of your antivirus system. And these changes are usually made by IT operations. So that's the second group. And the third group of problems we see out there that causes bots to break is centered around automation issues. And this, for example, includes simple issues such as synchronization issues between the bots and your software applications, for example. We see bots breaking due to poor object recognition that is used in automation, or due to no or even missing recovery handling. Now, these are the three main reasons why bots usually break in production from, again, the bird's eye perspective. Now, the problem here is that all these problems you've seen before, they sit on top of the business. They sit in the business domain. So these are the problems that usually cause the high maintenance effort related to RPA. Now, the weird thing here is that we observe that high maintenance effort, but at the same time, we also observe a pretty low change frequency of these business processes. Now, business processes, of course, don't change every single day, right? So they only change every once in a while, every now and then, I would say. So where does this discrepancy become between the high maintenance and the low change frequency come from? So that's the question here. Well, we already touched on it, right? This discrepancy comes from the changes that are made to the environments by IT operations, and from the changes that are made by software development teams to their software applications. So now the change frequency of these environments and the change frequency of the software applications is, of course, much higher than the change frequency of these business processes. So what does this mean for us? Well, this simply means that if, for example, we aren't able to incorporate these changes made by IT operations into our RPA in a timely manner, then we will just impose all the noise from these environment changes onto our automated business processes on the business side. And of course, the same holds true for our application changes, right? So if we aren't able to incorporate the changes made by software development into our RPA in a timely manner, yeah, then we will again impose all the noise from these application changes onto our automated business processes. So what's the solution for that? Well, the solution is fairly simple. The solution is to introduce controlled quality gates. Quality gates between business and IT operations, and between IT operations and software development. And the reason why we want to introduce those quality gates is we want to shift these problems to the left by doing this. So that is what we call RPA shift left. And this just means that we want to tackle these changes that cause these problems as early as possible. So to solve these problems, we really need to dig at the roots in software development and in IT operations, instead of just hacking at the leaves on the business side, so to say. So this means that we want to give also software development teams, and especially software testing teams there, the ability to continuously check whether the changes they make to their software applications might cause the bots to break in production. And the same holds true for IT operations. So we want to give them, IT ops teams, the ability to continuously check whether the changes they make to their environments might cause the bots to break in production. Now that's one capability of the UiPath testing platform, and we call that capability RPA testing. And that is one capability we will fully focus on in the next webinar in 2 weeks. So the main takeaway here is that the UiPath testing platform is not just a solution that helps software testing teams in software development to test their software applications. It's also a solution that helps RPA teams to continuously test their robotic process automation against application changes and environment changes. So by providing the UiPath testing platform, and of course a methodology that explains how to put all this into practice, we are convinced that the maintenance effort related to RPA and to automation in general can be reduced dramatically. So we are convinced that this will turn RPA from a rather high maintenance activity into a low maintenance activity. Now, with that said, let's now dive a little bit deeper into these 3 regimes here. First, automation, as we have seen, happens in all of these regimes. It happens in software development, in IT ops, and on the business side. Now, in software development, we primarily automate test cases. Test cases that help us to continuously evaluate the quality, for example, of the software that is being built. In IT operations, we primarily, not exclusively, of course, automate IT processes, such as the on and offboarding of employees or customer ticket handling, for example. And on the business side, we obviously automate business processes. So automation is an activity that happens literally everywhere. That means across the entire enterprise. So that's the main takeaway of this slide here. Now, the problem here is that this often leads to redundant automation, as we discussed before. Automation that is created redundantly in these 3 regimes. So in other words, automation within an organization is often reinvented again and again and again. And here we are talking about very, very simple automation, such as reading, writing, or verifying data in databases, or extracting information from documents, PDFs, for example, or verifying data in some weird emulated tables in SAP. Now, the reason why this is happening is fairly simple. The automation teams in software development, in IT ops, and on the business side are often completely separated from each other. And these teams usually don't have a, let's call it a basis, a platform to collaborate on automation with each other. So automation becomes siloed for that fact, and so it becomes redundant. Now, and as said, this is a waste of time, and so this has to stop. So our ultimate vision is to enable these teams to share the automation artifacts with each other. So our vision is to provide a platform that allows these teams to share automation assets on different levels. Levels such as entire automated business processes, or just simple task automations, or individual activities, or just automation of complex controls and screens, for example. Now, such a platform not only enables then automation teams to share automation assets or artifacts with each other, it also enables these teams to exploit automation skills from other teams in other departments. But as we all know, right, sharing in and of itself is not enough. So we also need to enable these teams to reuse automation assets from other teams with ease of use. So the platform we are referring to is not just a sharing platform. It's also a platform to store automation assets. It's a platform that enables these teams to easily, let's say, pick and choose automation assets created by other teams. So this platform also acts as a essential location where reusable automation assets are being maintained. And the goal here is to enable automation teams across the entire enterprise to easily reuse centralized automation assets and to reference these assets in their automation, whatever this automation is. It might be test automation, it might be robotic process automation, for example. Now, this all implies that these teams that are reusing automation assets from this platform are immediately notified when changes are made to these assets. Now, this in turn then enables these teams to easily update the automation. And in doing so, we are convinced to reduce the maintenance effort of automation and to speed up the time it even takes to create automation in the first place. Now, that is our vision. Now, our ultimate goal is to provide that platform to you, which we simply call the UiPath Enterprise Automation Platform. And the UiPath testing platform is just a part of it. So the main mantra here is share, reuse, and update. That is the ability to share, to reuse, and to update automation assets and automation skills across the entire enterprise. Now, this ability is what we call enterprise automation. So that means enterprise automation will not only help you to accelerate automation, it will also help you to digitize your organization through automation to eventually help you to become a fast-moving organization at the end of the day. Now, since we already provide, let's say, the #1 tool for robotic process automation on the business side, and as you know, we made our first steps into IT automation, the UiPath testing platform can so be understood as the missing link to achieve enterprise automation. So it's the missing link that enables you to share, reuse, and update automation assets as well as skills across the enterprise. Now, the key here is that you can only do that with one single solution for automation. And that's UiPath, right? How else would you be able to share and reuse automation assets? Well, you simply couldn't do that. So to conclude, through enterprise automation, we accelerate digital transformation. That's the main theme. Enterprise automation has to happen at the intersection between these three regimes, between business, IT ops, and development. And this means that enterprise automation is all about collaboration. And since collaboration fosters innovation, the vision behind the UiPath testing platform is simple. We want to equip you, our customers, with the missing tool to enable you to create business value fast for your customers by helping you to accelerate automation across the enterprise. Now, that is our vision, and that's the main aspect of our value proposition. Now, with all that said, let me now hand it over to Gerd, who will give you now a deep dive into part B, into our product mission. So I need to stop sharing now so that, Gerd, you are able to start sharing. Gerd, hope you're ready. If so, take it away.
Thank you, Ingo, and thank you for your eloquent introduction of this topic. I'm giving my best to be similar eloquent, but I might fail on that. So let's jump into the real stuff now and what we're going to deliver. So as Ingo mentioned before, our mission is to actually go towards this enterprise automation platform. And okay, I'm sorry, I have a quick technical issue here. Okay, can you see my slides? Okay, so what we are going to provide in the first release is the so-called UiPath testing platform. There are two core components to that. One is the application testing, and then the second component is the RPA testing. And we're going to talk about this in more detail. I'm going to show you what it's going to look like, actually what you will receive in the first version, okay? When we started out at UiPath, there was so much tools and strong technology assets here that we started to look around and say, like, okay, so what's there? What can we use for testing? And for example, UI automation, as Ingo mentioned, this is world-class UI automation that we have here. We've got Orchestrator, one of the strongest or the strongest distributed execution engine. And then we got the robots. So what we did is actually we defined a set of activities that are needed for testing and added those to the studio. And this will become the Studio T offering that I will speak in a second. The one component that was more or less missing was the test management. And I will speak about in full detail how we're going to build this test management component. There is a lot of other things that you want to do when you're testing your software automation, your software applications, or when you test your RPA. Some of that are our core competencies, and we will provide you a strong solution on this. Some are actually there are solutions out there that are enterprise best of breed solutions, and we looked into that, and we actually considered partnering and integrating with some of the strongest solutions out there. And I will speak at the very end of this webinar about the integrations that we're planning to do and what you can expect from us in the first release. Now take a look at the overall architecture. If you're familiar with UiPath offering, then you will know the studio, the orchestrator, and the robots. This is the same architecture still, right? So here what you see is you see the Studio T, you see the orchestrator, the robots, but there's a completely new component which is called the test management. Test management consists of two parts. One is the test management web front end, which is the application that you might be using. When we started to talk to existing customer, it was clear that there's a wealth of different possibilities and solutions out there. It could be Jira, it could be SAP, Azure DevOps, there's specific plugins for Jira, and so forth. So we realized if we want to build a solution that really adds value, we have to have a sort of an integration idea that connects all these pieces together. And that's how we came up with the Test Management Hub. The Test Management Hub is really a server that connects all the different components with each other. And for the first version, for example, you will see that there will be a Jira connector, there will be an SAP Solution Manager connector, and there will be an X-Ray connector, which is a specific plugin here. Further connectors will follow, and we will also encourage partners actually to build connectors, because this connector API or interface will be available for other partners to actually connect the tools that they need actually to build the automation they want. Okay, so when we talk about Studio T, you will see that we added some very useful things here. And I'm not going to take away too much, but we added verifications, multiple entry point, and so forth. And I'll speak about this in more detail. On the orchestrator side, this is your orchestrator that you know. But the newer version that will be released actually will have some other capabilities as well. You will be able to manage test sets, test cases, and test executions in this, which is really important when you think about that you have maybe thousands of test cases in a test regression suite that you want to run either overnight or maybe whenever you have a CI/CD tool triggering this. And our first integration, of course, will be with the main tool here, which is the Jenkins plugin, but we'll also provide integrations with Azure DevOps and other tools that are out there in the market. Now, when we look at the roadmap for the next 12, 18 months out, we really see three major themes or the topics that we are talking about. Our Q1 release, the April release now, is really geared towards bringing quality to your software and your automation. First, you will be able to test your applications. Second, you will be able to actually test your RPAs. that is one of the most important things that you will need if you want to scale your automation across the entire enterprise and if you want to get all the benefits that you're actually expecting. As we move towards the October release, you will actually get the full enterprise automation idea that Ingo just talked about. The full sharing and the reuse concept here, early creation of testing artifacts, the RPA shift left, as we sometimes call it, and so forth will be included in there. From there on, as we look into the future, it is all targeted towards intelligent automation. And I know this is a buzzword, but with intelligent automation, we mean to actually really leverage all the intelligent technologies that are existing within UiPath, the AI fabric, learning about production environments, for example, to bring in accurate risk-based assessments actually that are based on facts that you see in your production systems and not so much from whatever assumptions or estimations your business analysts make. So there's a lot of potential in this that we will add to this testing platform. Now, for the sake of this webinar, I would like to focus on what's coming out in the first release in April. And what you will see is there's 4 topics that I will speak about. Application testing is first, then we will talk about RPA testing. SAP testing is a core topic as well, and integrations. Let's jump into application testings. Now, application testing is whenever you develop software or whenever you customize enterprise software, you will have to ensure that actually the software is doing or behaving as expected. That means if you have a requirement to create a new customer, you will have to create some test cases that actually verify that this new customer can be created. Now, in the first version of this application testing, you will receive a test management component. This will give you the possibility to connect to test requirements. So whether you're going to store them in Jira, for example, you will be able to create test requirements and create test cases that verify those requirements. Very often, there is still manual testing out there in the testing world. We encourage you to automate as much as possible, but of course, we understand that there is a need for manual testing, so you will have some capabilities to do that too. With the Integration Hub, you will be able to integrate with all the other tools, not only the UiPath tools to use the automation, but also with other tools, for example, the X-ray integration. And of course, any test management solution needs to have some sort of a dashboard or reporting. We will provide an execution dashboard that will show you how many test cases were executed, what the results were, how many were passed, failed, and so forth. On the studio side, a few of the key things that we added or brought to the studio world actually is the test case management. So in testing, you don't only have one workflow, which is one test case, but you may have hundreds, maybe even thousands of that. And so within your studio project, you're now able to actually create thousands of workflows with multiple entry points. You will be able to actually create them, automate them, and publish them to Orchestrator. We also added a verification or assertion activity pack. Now, there's no test case that doesn't verify a certain result, right? At the moment, when you look at RPA and Orchestrator, it's all geared towards giving you status and update about the execution. But with the testing, we also need certain verifications. Did the number, the amount at the end of the transaction really add up to that number that was expected? Those are the kinds of questions you will have to ask. And of course, we will provide full test case versioning, which I think is pretty unique in this industry. I don't know of any other testing tool that is able to fully version control the automation in combination with the application versions that they are testing. And you're also able to actually run different versions of, for example, regression tests through the Orchestrator if you publish those packages. The Orchestrator will remain the same, but we will add some sections like the test case section. The test set action, you will be able to create logically group test cases. Now, think about this. You will have 1,000 test cases in a regression suite. You want to logically group them, bring them together, and then execute them. While you execute, you will be monitoring the execution, and of course, you also may want to schedule the execution if you are not using a CI/CD tool chain. Other things that I think most of our customers will need and use will data-driven testing, where you're able to import and link test data from data sources. The first data source that we will provide is an XLS, an Excel spreadsheet. So something which has not existed yet, and I think it's gaining more and more importance also on the RPA side, but on the testing side, it's a real must-have, is mobile device automation. And with that mobile device automation, you will be able to automate any device that you have, Android, iOS. It is actually based on the Appium technology, which is the leading open source framework for mobile automation. And we will provide a mobile device manager, and you will see that there is a brand new set of mobile device activities. Last but not least, the CI/CD integration, which will be based on the Jenkins plugin for now, but Azure DevOps is already in the making, and we will release hopefully as quick as we have that finished. Now let's take a look at this and give you some impression of what this is going to look like. And I'd like to start at the test management, which I think is the natural starting point. So the test management will be a very clean web-based application. What it does is actually, it lets you structure the information that you, for example, have in your requirements. Your requirements or user stories, if you're in an agile world, will be structured, for example, by sprints, how you develop your software. Every sprint will have a certain set of user stories included that will be implemented. When you click on this, you may see that there's different teams working on different items, so you can drill down and go into like what this team is working on. Now here you see there are no requirements linked yet. So let's go and link some requirements from our Jira tool, which actually contains all the user stories. With a simple query, you can actually connect, select all the user stories that you want, and then you say simply link, and you will see that these requirements have been linked now. We're not copying or importing any items here, but we will create reference objects that hold the necessary information that you may need actually to now, in the next step, create test cases that verify more or less that these user stories are fulfilled. So here you see, this is the requirement itself with the details, and now we can say, let's add a test case to that. A test case will have a basic name, a description, and let's create the test case. So we have the first test case here, we're in the test case. And what are we going to do with this, right? There's different options now. First, you could actually create automation. Well, in most cases, it will not be automation immediately. We may, for example, create some manual tests first, or maybe you may want to document this with our Connect Explorer, for example, right? There might be some parameters that you need, but in this case, let's jump on this and say like, okay, let's automate. We click on this, create automation, and in that case, we start up our Studio T. Now in Studio T, you select whether you want to have a new project or an existing project. Let's pick a new one, and you see that we are here in the studio, and we have the first project template for the test case. This is a suggestion as a BDD concept template, which is given when then structure, right? So in this case, we can actually implement and automate some steps here. Now, test cases typically tend to be more simple sequences of interactions with certain verifications in them. When you're done with the automation, you would say publish these test cases, and they will be published to Orchestrator. Now we are back in the requirements section where we can see these requirements. We can add as many as we want, and we can add test cases. Now let's say we click on the test cases and we say, let's execute all of them. And this has invoked the execution on the orchestrator now. Now, as soon as they're finished, you will receive actually that the execution results are available. Now we can go into the execution results section and take a look at this. So what you can see here is that you actually can create test sets that actually, for example, represent a regression. These regression can be run over and over as many times as you need. If you create a test set on the fly, you will get a transient test set. And that is the first one that we have on the top here. Let's click on this real quick. And now we see actually that we have 4 test cases in here. 3 of them have passed and 1 has failed. Let's take a look at the one that failed. In this case, we see the results. So the failure actually reported that there was a verification of a field that contains a number. And the number is supposed to be 756,32. the actual result was different. So this is a typical logical mistake that was based on the wrong calculation or something, and we have to file a defect for this because this might have a business impact. You may also see results here, for example, that the execution didn't work. That, for example, a control couldn't be found, the selector was not unique or couldn't be identified, and those kind of things. This is the information that you actually need when you run your test cases to identify, is that a real bug, or is that maybe a ripple effect from some other execution problems that I encountered in test cases before. Now let's jump to Studio T. In Studio T, we are back in Studio T. We've got the given when then structure here. We will have the possibility to create test cases as well. So let's create a test case. And the first thing that we will do with this new test case is actually we will link it back to the test case and the test requirement that it actually verifies. So after we've assigned that, we say, okay, and then we create test cases in here. Now, when we click on the when option, we can, of course, automate again and add the transactions, but we can also add multiple test cases. And you can see now on the left-hand side, this can be up to 10,000 or more test cases that you're managing here at the same time. So that's a big difference. Also, what you can see here in the screen is all the different verifications that we added. Verifications can be simple field comparisons. They can be equal, not equal. They can also verify, for example, screen objects. You can take a screen object and verify the color of that, or you can also use, as you see in the last example here, quite complex expressions, which then will just be verified whether they deliver true or false. Those are all the typical verifications that you might need in your testing and that we will provide with the assertions pack. Now let's publish these test cases up to the orchestrator, and they're good to go for you. Here we go. Now, after we created those test cases and we published them, we want to go and see the execution and see them on the test on the orchestrator. Now let's click on the orchestrator, and you might see here there are some new items here which you haven't seen before. When you look at the left-hand side, you will see that there is test cases, test sets, test executions, and so forth. In this view, you see all the different test cases. We have about 240 test cases here. This could be literally thousands of test cases that you have in your orchestrator. You can search and filter, and I think most important, you can group them logically together to so-called test sets. Now, these are all the different test sets that you may be using. Some of them may be triggered through CI/CD tools. Some of them might be smoke tests, regression tests, integration tests, whatever the test purpose is, you might see. We can also create a new test set and more or less say, okay, let's specify the test environment, select the projects that we have, and then from here on, we can select all the different test cases that we would like to include. And let's say, okay, now we created a new test set in this list in here. Now, what we can go to the test execution section, and we can actually click on execute. And this will be more or less the manual execution as you would want it if you want to run those test cases, and you select your new test set. As soon as we click on this, you see the test set will be executed, and you will see progress monitoring here. So let's drill down and see what's going on. Within this, you see that actually the first two test cases have already passed. One has failed, 3 are in progress, and the remaining 4 are actually being queued and will be executed shortly. As we wait for all the test cases to finish, you will see the progression bar on the top showing the passed and the failed result, and now you see all the different tests that have passed and failed. Now, if we drill into the results, why have the failed? And that's one of the key activities, as I mentioned before. You will see here, for example, that actually this was the wrong value that we've identified sooner. And it might also show you that there was a selector which couldn't be found. That could be because, for example, the control has changed. Ingo mentioned that before, right? Applications get updated, and for whatever reason, a developer changed the ID of a button. It's still the same button, but it has a different ID now. So that means actually the selector needs to be updated. One thing I think which I think most of our customers will appreciate is a data-driven testing. Now, with data-driven testing, what you do is you actually create a set of data records which will represent different tests and different test cases, and you will actually simply load them into your automated test case. The way you do this is by going into your studio. You say create data-driven test case. In this case, it will ask me what's the data source, and I will select an XLS or Excel spreadsheet. In this case, we take this workbook, and then we select the worksheet, which is number 2, and we've got this the worksheet selected. Now, when we import the data, you will see that immediately these data columns will be provided as input variables here that can be used throughout the workflows. So whenever I click into some activities, for example, I will be able to reference or actually read and use these data points or data records that I've just imported. Now, here you get a data view where you can see all the different record types. You see the different brands and the different performance types and whatever. So we can select all of these, and then we more or less just execute them, for example, on your local robot service, or you can also deploy them and publish them on your orchestrator. The next topic is the mobile testing, and I think that's a pretty exciting topic, actually. When you look at your studio, and here we're in the same familiar studio view that we had before, you will be able to say, like, okay, let's create a mobile device or connect to a mobile device by using the mobile device manager. That is this tool that will pop up and that we just developed for you. So what is here is like it's empty because we haven't added any control. So let's add the first device, and the first device dialog pops up. Now, in this case, there are some specifications needed. You can give it a display name so you recognize the device again. You can actually specify the endpoint from Appium, different operating versions and tools. There's also other additional desired capabilities, and there's also a possibility to add geo coordinates. Why is that important? Well, in many mobile location-based services or applications, you may want to know, is my service going to work if I actually try to do this in New York City? And the simplest way is if you can enter the geo coordinates, and then you can actually test and verify how the application is working in that region. If you want to have an image to recognize the device better, you can simply add an image here, and then you can actually connect and save this configuration. What you see here now is a fully configured mobile device manager. On the left-hand side, you see all the different devices that you can connect. Those can be hundreds of devices. And in the middle, you see the emulator, actually, which fully is connected to that device. And it allows you actually to fully interact with that device without touching it in person, okay? So on this emulator here, for example, I could already swipe, I could tap, long tap, short tap, double tap. I could do any interaction here that you would do with the device itself. And of course, you can also record that interaction to create your mobile automation. And so what this will result in is that you will receive a sequence of interactions here and activities. The first one is to create a connection to that mobile device, which can be parameterized because you want to run this, for example, in a device cloud, like in a Sauce Labs cloud, which will be one of our first integrations. You will be able to actually invoke or start the application, and then you are able to steer the controls, just like you would do with any other automation. And you will be able to actually use the same test case here. It doesn't matter if it's an Android or if it's an iPhone or whatever technology is behind it. You will have also very special activities here. For example, like the swipe. That's a gesture that is actually only available on a mobile device. Or the tap. We know the click and the double click, right? And the right click. But on a mobile device, you would have a single tab, you would have a double tab, or maybe a long tab. All these transactions or activities are now available for you to automate devices. Okay, so the next topic is RPA testing. And it has a little story. When we attended our first customer advisory boards meeting, and we talked with customers about how they're building the RPAs, and after some time, I realized, like, if you use, let's say, 2 or 3 developers for a month, or maybe 2 or 3, what you're building is real software. I mean, these RPA processes are getting more and more complex. So basically the idea is, if you're building software, you should be able to verify the quality of this before you put it in production. And that's what RPA testing is really about. So when you take a look at RPA testing, and this is in our first version, you will be able to create test cases that will test your RPAs in one project. So that means, let's say you have a workflow that is running and processing bills, you will be able to create test cases that test all different types of bills, invoices, and so forth, with the different types of customers that you have, and so forth. You will be able to create 1 to 10 test cases per workflow. You will be able to publish and store this together with the to the orchestrator. Now, when we're talking about testing, we mean typically not to be in a production environment. What's the consequence of not being in a production environment is that certain activities or services may not be available. In this case, what you have to do is you have to simulate the production environment, which is very often known as mocking or stubbing. And so we provide some capabilities how you could mock variables, or how you can mock and stub activities and sequences in your workflows to provide an alternative course of action while you're not able to use the original service. And last but not least, what is important here is we want to enable you that you have the possibility to have sort of a confidence score or a report that shows that your RPAs have been tested and are actually safe to deploy. And so with that, we will actually help you provide to analyze the execution path through the workflows, which is sort of a path coverage, and then also create the test cases that you need to actually path all the different, cover all the different paths and touch all the different activities in your workflow. Now let's take a look at this, what this looks like. So we have in our studio here a workflow, and let's open one of the sub workflows here and say we want to create a test case for this one. So we take the first one, we say create a test case here, and on the left hand side you see that we just created a test case, create insurance code, for example. Now we see here that we have a similar given when then structure. Given means that everything that has to be set up or is required for the execution can be configured here. Then you have the execution of the workflow itself. And at the end, you have the then, which is the post condition more or less, that gives you the validation that everything worked as expected. Now, if you click on this, you see that we get all the parameters and the variables from this workflow. So you are able to actually feed the information as needed. Now, please don't forget, typically we are not in production now. If you receive, let's say, an invoice coming in, that is something which will be a test data, right? So we would provide a test invoice that you would actually feed to your process. We would maybe actually parse that or maybe mock that activity and provide the data variables that are coming out of that invoice, for example. Those are the parameters that you see here. Now, at the end, if we want to verify that this process worked, actually, we need to add a verification. And this verification can be simply by clicking on identifier on screen, and you say like, okay, so this is the application. At the end, there should be a number right here, and it should be this number. And if that is the number, then the test case has been correct. Now we've got a test case, we've got some verification in there, and we can create multiple test cases for this workflow, okay? Now let's get into the one activity here, this workflow, and see, okay, the select engine performance, for whatever reason, we cannot use in our test. So let's click on this and say mock activity. Now with mock activity, we create a surrounding activity that actually provides two paths through that activity. So one is the original path that you would take in your workflow, but there's an alternative path now, which is actually taken during test execution. And this is the mock path. So whatever activity or whatever behavior you would like to have, you would add into the alternative. While this is running as a test, it will always go through the test path. as soon as you would run it as a process, it would immediately go through the process path. This is to avoid any confusion or whatever while you are in a test environment or a production environment. Now, at the very end, you look at your workflows and you see that there is different paths. And in this case, we kept this simple to illustrate it. But you will see, for example, if I run my test cases. Now, let's take a look at the test cases which we have. We have automobile, truck, and we did not select the motorcycle. Okay, so just keep that in mind. When we go back and run them, they will be executed, and then we get the results of the execution. Now here we have three paths: automobile, motorcycle, truck. The first run was an automobile. You see the highlighted green path through this. Then the second run was an automobile too. So let's skip the second one and click on the third one and see what happened there. So in the third one, you see that we ran through the other path through the truck. And now you also will notice that we see that the motorcycle path has not been executed. As a metric suggestion here, we will provide path coverage. In this case, you're talking about 66.6666% because 1/3 was not executed. But we will enable you also with the capabilities here to see which activities have been touched and which not. It's critical for you to understand before you put a process in production that you see which parts have been tested and which have not been touched. So that's very important. Now let's jump into SAP testing here. And SAP testing, I think, is a great topic and is a very important topic. Now on the SAP testing side, it's all about supporting SAP environments and UIs. So we just got certified for the SAP WinGUI automation. What that means is that we provide a comprehensive control support that gives you stable, maintainable selectors. The whole selectors are business readable, and you can actually use this for your SAP automation. There's other environments, of course, like the SAP Business Client, the SAP Fiori, which are also being supported. We also got certified, by the way, for the SAP BAPI, the API interface, which is actually great to create data or import or export data in large amounts, mass data transfers. Now, why is the certification such a big deal and so important? First of all, it's not easy to get certified. Second, there's a reason. SAP wants to keep up the quality standards. And whenever you pass a certification, it at least tells your customer that you have passed certain quality criteria that SAP expects from one of their solutions. So this gives you credibility. It also confirms with all the standards that SAP provides, and it shows that there is a certain quality in that solution. There's some other perks, like you can use the SAP logo, of course. You will also be mentioned by SAP and be included in their solution directory. But I think the most important value here is that if a solution is not certified, it actually may not be on the quality standards that you expect. And so therefore, I would be careful and would just take a look if any solution that you see out there is certified from SAP directly. Okay, here's just a quick example of the new activities that we added. These are 3 of them. There's much more of those activities. Status bar is a major control in the WinGUI. To read that and actually to manipulate that, the tool button clicked, and for example, the date select in the calendar and so forth. So, and there's more. Now, the last topic, and I hope we are doing okay on time actually here. So let me speed up a little bit. We're talking about integrations, and the integrations are an important part. When we started out, we looked at all the core strengths that UiPath brings to the marketplace. And we said, like, wherever we are really strong, we're going to provide the strongest technology to our customer. Where there are gaps and we need some solution, we will provide at least core capabilities to our customers, but we will look into the marketplace and see if we can partner with one of the best of breed vendors. Nobody has a complete solution with all best of breed components. So it's easier actually, if we want to provide these best of breed components to our customers, that we speak with these vendors and actually integrate or partner with them. So that's the goal of our solution, is that we actually will provide the strongest core capabilities that we have to our customers, and will add other capabilities into the mix if we feel like our customers will benefit from that. And you will see some icons. There is CA now, Broadcom. There are tools like Atlassian, Postman, and so forth that will be added to this mix. In the first version, you will get a Jira integration. You will have a Postman integration, Jenkins, for example. Jira for test management, of course, exploratory testing, and our test management hub. For Postman is one of the leading API tools where you can actually create collections, execute them, and run them either in local or remote execution. Jenkins, I think, is the leading CI/CD tool, which will enable you to integrate into your pipeline and have seamless support when you want to trigger build events, for example, to run your regression tests and so forth. Other tools that we will integrate, one I mentioned it before at the test management part, is X-Ray, which is a test management plugin on the Jira base, and also Sauce Labs, which is one of the leading, or I would say the leading device management tool in the cloud that actually enables customers to test mobile devices. So this is it. I mean, this is what we have planned for you in April. I hope this information was useful and you got some better idea of what is coming along the pipeline here. We're talking about our testing platform, which contains the application testing and the RPA testing. And if I went over time, I apologize. I hope it was worth your time. And Ingo, if we have some time for some questions, I would be happy to answer some questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gerd. Of course, we had already a couple of questions. We answered them already in the Q&A. One question I would like to briefly take it is the one, will there be trainings on the Academy? So let me briefly answer that, Gerd. So yes, there will be trainings on the UiPath testing platform on the Academy. So you will find a foundational course and a deep dive course, for example, on RPA testing, SAP automation, API and mobile automation. So these are the set of trainings we plan to provide with the public release that will happen in April this year. I've also received a couple of questions in the private chat, so maybe Gerd, you can take on that. I think there's been some confusion about the test management component. So the question was, is the test management component part of Orchestrator? Is it an own setup, an own server component?
Okay, so I'm sorry, I don't see the private chat at the moment because I'm still in presentation mode, but I can answer that question. The test management component at the moment, at this time, is going to be a separate component. It's not part of the Orchestrator. It's a standalone web-based application. Where it will actually end up in the future is still to be discussed, okay? It's very likely that it might go into the Orchestrator platform, but at this first release, it will be an independent setup.
Cool, thank you so much, Gerd. Let's take one more question because we are running out of time. There are a bunch of questions around mobile automation. One is for mobile automation, do you support emulators?
Yes, I think we have Christian on the call. If I want to give him the right to answer the question, Christian, do you want to take it?
Yes. As we are using Appium as base framework, we support any types of devices. It does not matter if it's real devices or emulators, or if it is in a cloud, or if it's a local device in your own device farm. It does not matter. Both, all these combinations work.
Cool. Thank you so much, Christian. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are already running out of time, so we now need to come to an end of the session. So we still have two unanswered questions. We will provide the answer to these questions after the webinar. With that, of course, we'll share the recording and the Q&A with you after that in the next few days. And please do not forget to join our next webinar. It will be fully focused on RPA testing. Here, our Director of Product Management, Thomas Stocker, will take a deep dive into that topic. In the meantime, please feel free to contact us. We will provide the contact details to you again after the webinar. And with that said, thank you ever so much for joining again and have a great day. Bye.